How's it going, everyone? This video is going to be over the box setup. If you haven't seen my first version of this video, it'll be linked in the top right hand corner. However, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth in using this for entry as well as bias. The box setup is when we have some sort of resting liquidity, generally in the form of an old high or low, and we get an aggressive move out of the range and then back into the range. So looking at this initial range, I'm looking for a retest of this high of the range for a reaction, and at the low, a reaction off of this previous low. Another way to look at this is the deviation from our range, or over this old high. I'm looking for price to reach back into this deviation for a reaction, and here at the low, same thing. Now, how do I manage my risk in this scenario? I'm looking to take an entry when we retest this deviation from the range with my stop on the current high, and then targeting whatever liquidity we have below. So over here, it would look something like this. Looking at a few more scenarios here, we have a consolidation range, a deviation, and then a retest of that deviation right there. And it looks about the same for each scenario. Now, the most important part, or what I focus on the most, is this move out and back into the range needs to be aggressive. And I will show that in some examples. And before we get into the examples, you may notice this looks exactly like power of 3 or accumulation, manipulation, distribution. And that's because that's what it is. Here would be the accumulation. We have our manipulation marked out, and our distribution would be when price moves away from the manipulation and goes lower towards the range low and whatever is resting below. For this first example, you can notice we have a range high and a range low right here. And one thing to point out, I generally mark out the bodies for this setup, so that is what I'm going to be using. Now that we have those marked out, let's see what happens when price leaves the range if it does. And you notice we get an aggressive move out of the range, so to fulfill the requirements, I need an aggressive move back into the range. And that is an aggressive move back into the range. And the reason for needing the aggressive out and then back into the range is this is what forms the wick on a higher time frame. So now what am I looking for? I'm looking for a return to this area right here, or this previous high, my stop on this high, and then I'm looking for the other side of the range, preferably. So watching this, here we go, we get a move back up to this high. Now I want to see a move lower. And there we go, we get a move lower. So cleaning up the chart a little, where was our deviation from the range? Right here. And then when did we retest the deviation? Right here. And a quick side note, if you haven't seen my previous video on inducement setup right here, with this high being ran and closed back below, I will link that in the top right. In this next example, we have a low right here in a downtrend. I'm expecting this to be ran. Here, you notice we get aggressive down and aggressive right back up. And like I said, I generally use the bodies on this. So I'd like to see this support price to go higher to this side of the range. So if I was looking for this setup, it would be something like this. Letting this play out. And there we go. And just taking a look at where the deviation from the range was, let's go ahead and mark it out. Here was the deviation from the range, so aggressive out, aggressive back in, and then this old low supports price. Now, if I'm struggling to identify a range, what do? I personally just wait for displacement over highs. So if I'm looking right here, and I don't see any range that I like as a consolidation range or just a range in general, I just wait. Here I see an aggressive move up and then back down. From here I look left, which highs were ran? Right here. So I mark out the highest body. Now we get a close in, and from here I would want to see price reach from here to the other side of the range. Letting this play out, it retests that level and then goes lower. Now what do I see on this side? Well, I just had a low. I had an aggressive move below, back into the range. So now I would want to see price reach back down to this previous low, then go reach for the other side. So let's see what happens. And there we go. For this next example, it's pretty easy to see we have some highs right here, and we are within a range. However, even if we didn't know that, let's see what happens. You get displacement up. Now, if this wasn't to displace back in, I would not be looking for shorts. However, what happens? We get an aggressive displacement back in. So what am I looking for? I go to the displacement, I look left, which highs were ran. I will use the highest bodies, and then I am looking for a short setup right here, a stop on this high, and then looking for the other side of the range, or in this case, I'll just go for 2R before runners. And there we go. We get the move, and you can see how this dropped back down. And if we let it keep playing, you can see that would have given just over 5R. In this next example, I'm going to show you a scenario when I would use the wicks as my low instead of the bodies. So if you look right here, we have a low put in. We get a very aggressive move down, and now we get an aggressive move back up. If I was to use the body here, my level would be right here. And so for this case, I would prefer to use the wick right here. And there we go. We get a nice tap of that before moving higher. Using the box setup for bias, I generally focus on the 4-hour or daily time frame, and I just follow the displacement, as well as look for deviations from the range. So for example here, we have an old high over here, marking out this body. We get a move higher, nice close above, before an aggressive move lower, and then retesting that, so marking out the deviation from the range. It looks something like so. Similarly over here, we have this low right here, deviation from the range, and that is how I get my bias, especially with range trading. Now if I go out to the daily, this is when I generally will focus on just the wicks, like so, and then I will look for the deviation from the range on this time frame, and then use the lower time frames, such as the 15-minute, to go look for setups in here and in here. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please consider giving it a like and subscribing, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. See ya.